Hey folks, Nick Culbertson here, and today we're looking at 10 iconic Amazing Spider-Man covers. Let's get started! Spider-Man's humble beginnings go back to Amazing Fantasy issue number 15. It was the last one of the series, and it was Stan Lee's attempt at throwing Spider-Man at the masses. And his publishers didn't really like the idea of a Spider-Man because they thought people were scared of spiders. But after they saw the sales figures, the market had decided Spider-Man was a good and lucrative idea. So they gave Spider-Man his own amazing series, Amazing Spider-Man. And then they spun off Spider-Man, pun very much intended, into several different series. Marvel Tales starring Spider-Man. Marvel Team Up, Spider-Man and Black Widow. Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. The Web of Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2099. The Amazing Spider-Man, Skating on Thin Ice. This one's kind of a bummer because it has a Todd McFarlane cover, but then someone else did the interior. Dang it! Over the years, he evolved quite a bit, starting out as just a scrawny kid with a medium build, and over time getting a little bit more toned and more Spidey stretchy. Now fast forward to the early 90s, late 80s when I was collecting comics, and now I'm going to regale you with a little tale of what was happening in the comics world at the time. Going into a comic book store in those days was an absolute fever dream. Everywhere you would look, there was a huge comic event happening. Oh, a new Spider-Man, a new Venom, a new series of Spider-Man, all these Image comics. But wait, these Valiant comics, those are the ones that are worth something. Oh my God! Is that a hologram? Does that one glow in the dark? There are 7 variants for the new Spider-Man cover and I only have 2? Premiere issues. So how about Venom number 1? Or, if you don't like that, how about another Venom number 1 of another sub-series? Gimmick covers. This Venom comic glows in the dark. Ren and Stimpy comic with a scratch and sniff smeller on the inside. Amazing Spider-Man with the gold foil. The Amazing Spider-Man with a hologram cover. For some reason, you have to hold these in like just the right angle or you can't see them. DC jumping in on the action with a hologram and another number 1 issue. And Malibu Comics creating a comic book that's cut out like the face of the ferret. Oh, you haven't heard of the ferret? Cross comic events. They had the Infinity Gauntlet crossover. And these crossovers were with Thanos trying to get the Infinity Gauntlet, trying to take over the world. I think we all know what happened. And that snap removed half the money from our parents' wallets. Series-defining moments. They broke Batman's back. Every comic had to be a big event. Superman died. And incredible art to back it all up. Comic book artists for the first time were starting to draw massive followings behind what they were creating because they were like rock stars. Todd McFarlane got his very own Spider-Man series and they started renumbering it. So this was Spider-Man number 1. Of course, with the growth of comics, it wasn't too long until McFarlane and the boys decided they were going to go start their own comic book shop. And so they started Image Comics. Spawn number 8, he pays homage to that original cover he did for Spider-Man number 1. Another big artist from Spider-Man, Erik Larsen, went on to make his own series with the Savage Dragon. Every time you would enter the comic book store, there would be something new, bigger, and better. And then, nothing. Silence. One thing you should know about what made comic books so popular in the 90s was that speculators were buying up the inventory of these new big comic book premieres. They were banking on the idea that they would be worth mega money one day. The problem was that both the supply and demand were really high at the same time. What made the old comic book issues so valuable was their scarcity. Later, things like eBay were the nail in the coffin for collectors, making it easier to sell comics, but it kept the inventory constantly really high while the demand was growing smaller and smaller. When the speculators left, so did the comic book fans. The industry just needed to take a breather. And for me, I got into new forms of media. Video games, playing guitar, soccer, and television filled up all my free time. And sadly, our comic books were either sold or retired into the closet
underneath a pile of Pogs and action figures.
Needless to say, the market got oversaturated really quickly, and they kept up with the demand. I will say the comic book industry kept up with the demand and then some. So that's how comic books went from the new hotness in the 90s to the biggest thing on the planet to nothing at all. Oh yeah, we're talking about Spider-Man covers. Well, let's go through the cover history, looking at some of the highlights through the Spider-Man issues, and see how Spidey progressed over the decades. All right, let's get this list of cracking with number 1.
So the first cover we have on our list, of course, is Amazing Spider-Man number 1. And you'll notice that Fantastic Four are featured on this cover prominently. They were already an established superhero team before Spider-Man ever came out, so no doubt they're on here to help bolster the sales of the first issue of Amazing Spider-Man. The Fantastic Four think I'm trapped, but they don't suspect my real power. Is your real power that you're a Spider-Man?
Number 2.
Next up, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 33, another Ditko cover. And I actually have this one, has been hanging on my wall. This is quite iconic because having Spider-Man in the water. For some reason, they love to put Spider-Man underwater. You can see it in several comics throughout the time. The YouTube channel Comic Tropes, he has in his intro some fan art where someone has made him look like this cover of Amazing Spider-Man. So, pretty cool.
Number 3.
Next up, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 50, new cover artist, Romita Sr., and this one is another iconic one. You have Peter Parker walking away from Spider-Man, and has sort of just a striking color. The composition of this one is just great, because it tells a whole story just in this picture.
Number 4.
Next, we jump up to issue 129. This one is the first appearance of the Punisher. It's another Romita Sr. cover. This one is super cool because it's just the way it's composed. You have Spider-Man flipping through the air, which is the way we prefer our Spider-Man to be, and Frank Castle looking like an absolute boss. And just the composition of having what you're seeing through his viewfinder, it just adds to the drama of the entire piece.
Number 5.
Next, we have Amazing Spider-Man 238, the first appearance of Hobgoblin. This one is pretty wicked looking. I do prefer my comics to have a dark undertone to them. Ripping apart Spider-Man's suit as Hobgoblin's peeking through it. We saw previously in the Hulk where the face was blacked out and you could just see some of the details lit up. That really sells the menacing look of Hobgoblin in this one. And this cover is actually done by Romita Sr. and Romita Jr., so it's now a family affair.
Number 6.
Okay, next up is Amazing Spider-Man 252. This cover paying homage to Amazing Fantasy number 15, which was Spider-Man's first appearance. And this time, it's the first appearance of the black costume. Beautifully composed, really cool colors going on in the background. This is definitely a wall-hanging poster piece.
Number 7.
All right, next we jump to issue 300, big special 25th anniversary issue, and you know who it is. It's Todd McFarlane. Todd McFarlane did great changes to Spider-Man in the way that he positioned the body, how he used foreshortening, and he likes to twist the body too. He will kink different things for Spider-Man in different angles, and he has all these different planes. So the thumb is on a plane, this pointer's on a separate plane, his forearm's on a separate plane, going back. Then it's his foot, that's on a separate plane, his face, then his shoulder, his knee down here. There's so much going on here. And of course, his signature Spider-Man webbing that's shooting across the screen. The next issue, 301, was the same thing except for it was colored in Spider-Man's traditional suit.
Number 8.
This is a group of them, so I couldn't choose just one. This is Todd McFarlane versus Spider-Man. He had so many covers where Spider-Man would be fighting against some new enemy. Of course, here he is fighting against Venom, who was the creation that came from the black suit. Another one where he's fighting Scorpion right here, and Spider-Man's in a very dynamic pose, flying through the air with the kinked wrist. And the next one is the saber-tooth one. I have this one. I've been having this one hanging on my walls. I like it because Sabretooth just looks totally gnarly in this, and his pose is, again, just so dynamic and different the way that Todd's doing this stuff, because you can actually see the character's back and their face. Yeah, the twist that's going on there is totally rad. And then, of course, Todd coming back to making the Incredible Hulk here, where he's getting punched in the joints by Spider-Man. I think that's where he's punching him. Maybe he's punching him in the gut. It's just rad. And here's another one of Hulk bashing through the actual name like it's a physical object. I feel like maybe the Hulk has done that more than any other superhero.
Number 9.
All right, next on our list, we have issue 337. This one is with Erik Larsen doing the cover. I really like this one because I like Erik Larsen's later work that he did on the Spider-Man series. Not Amazing Spider-Man, just Spider-Man. And this cover always grabbed me just because it shows a full cast of the Sinister Six. All these bad guys that Spider-Man is fighting throughout this entire little mini storyline. I do wish that the details of the face were a little more defined, especially on like the Vulture. But all in all, it's beautifully composed. You get to see a real diverse group of bad guys that he's up against, and a preview of what's to come with more Erik Larsen comics in the future. All right, now we're on to some honorable mentions. Amazing Spider-Man number 23. I almost put this on the list, but I feel like because I had this one, I feel like I'm biased towards it. But it's one of the first covers where you have Spider-Man jumping through the air, upside down, fighting against an enemy. So there's a lot of action happening here. Also, you have the Green Goblin. This isn't Green Goblin's first appearance, but it is the first appearance with Green Goblin where Spider-Man is jumping through the air instead of just being tied up in some ropes like some kind of noob. Next is Amazing Spider-Man number 62 with Medusa. Man, this cover is amazing. She looks so awesome. That big hair. If you don't know by now, I'm all into the big hair. She looks like she should be in an 80s all-superhero rock group. I didn't think this one would be iconic for everyone, but for me, it's one of my favorite. All right, next on our list, we have Amazing Spider-Man 294. I actually have this one. This one's really cool. It's a part of the Kraven storyline. Kraven storyline is really cool. If you haven't read it, Comic Tropes has a video review telling the story, so it's really cool. I'll actually put that in the description because I enjoyed that video a lot. And I enjoy that channel. You should check out that channel too. Yeah, I think you should. Okay, hang on. Gotta catch my breath. The dramatic lighting coming up from the bottom and having Spider-Man there in the background, of course wearing his black suit once again. This cover is really sinister looking, and I think that's kind of what's so appealing to me. And it's also a really dark storyline. Probably the darkest storyline with Spider-Man. Check it out, man! There's also Amazing Spider-Man 101. This is the first appearance of Morbius. And I always like this one because he's actually backhanding Spider-Man. The most humiliating way to fight Spider-Man. And I haven't read this one, but Spider-Man has 6 arms. Something weird going on there. It's like the Goro. Did Goro have 6 arms or 4 arms? Oh man, now I gotta Google this. Goro had 4 arms. I knew that. I now know that. All right, and our last honorable mention is Amazing Spider-Man 308. In this cover, Todd McFarlane did that signature thing where he blacks out the front of the face, but then has the details in white. You might remember the same thing happened in Incredible Hulk 333, which was in the previous video. If you haven't seen that one, you should definitely check it out after this video.
Number 10.
All right, and our final cover for this countdown, you've almost made it, is Amazing Spider-Man 361, a cover appearance with Carnage by Bagley. This one is because Carnage is about to be in some movies, I think here in the near future. This comic has gone up in value, but I've always liked this one for the composition. It's like a Renaissance painting. In the 90s, Carnage, Venom, and Cardiac were 3 of the coolest new Spider-Man enemies. And this is a comic that kicked off a storyline with Carnage. And Bagley was an amazing Spider-Man. He was an amazing Spider-Man cover artist. He had big shoes to fill following up Erik Larsen and Todd McFarlane, and he did an incredible job. Okay, one last thing. As I probably mentioned before, after Todd McFarlane left Amazing Spider-Man, he had his own new Spider-Man series that was being counted. If you want me to go over those covers at some point, I'd love to do so. Just let me know in the comments. I don't really need to make the video if the video's just for me. Also has some awesome art by Erik Larsen. And I think these covers really serve as the transition point where Marvel goes to Image, where superheroes went from being superheroes to superheroes. But that's all the comic books we're going to look at in this video today. You done a real good job. You done a good job. And now I'm going to enjoy this tea and pass it back over to you, Nick.
Alright, thanks so much for watching the video. If there were any that I left off that you think needed to be on this list, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know which one was your favorite. Again, I might do another 10 of these. Depends. I really don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to have for lunch. Probably cottage cheese. Be sure to like and subscribe, do all the things, and stick around and watch another video to see what's coming up next. And then I want you to thank you very much for watching this episode. Okay. See you next time. Bye.